Hi scientists, welcome to your first science textbook reading. By now you have clicked on the YouTube button here to listen and read along with me. But first, let's look at the directions. It says link the URL to this textbook reading in your Skills of a Scientist slideshow. This is the URL that you'll need to copy and paste and put it in your science textbook slideshow, your Skills of a Scientist slideshow on slide 7 in the box next to science textbook inferring. After that, you will listen and read along with me as I read the pages out loud. You will mark the text like I do, and you will answer the questions at the end of this reading. After you read, you will have a graded textbook question to do in Canvas. Okay, so let's go back first. It says link the URL of this textbook reading in your student slideshow. So you should have your student Skills of a Scientist slideshow up. Okay, and then if you look on slide 7, it says Canvas assignments. Okay, right here, science textbook inferring. We need to put the URL here from the document you have open right now. So I'm going to click on here. It highlights it in blue. I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to go to my Skills of a Scientist student version, and right here I'm going to paste it, and there I have it linked. So now every time I'm using my Skills of a Scientist students slideshow to study for all my homework and tests, on slide 7 I have my science textbook. Okay, all right, so that is linked. Let's go back to our reading. Next, you will listen and read along with me. You will mark the text like I do, and you will answer the questions at the bottom. Okay, so let's get reading. Whenever we read our science textbook, we always think of two things. The most important words from that paragraph, we're going to highlight those. And then what is the main idea sentence? We're going to underline that. So this first time today, I am going to show you what that looks like. You simply need to do what I do. In the future, you are going to be reading the textbook pages on your own. You are going to be highlighting the most important words on your own and underlining on your own. Let me help you with this one today. Inferring paragraph 1. I'm going to read. I want you to read in your head. That will make you a better reader. Here we go. One day, Jane watched as a chimp peered into a tree hole. The chimp picked up a handful of leaves and chewed on them. Then it took the leaves out of its mouth and pushed them into the hollow. When the chimp pulled the leaves out, Jane saw the gleam of water. The chimp then put the wet leaves back into its mouth. Jane reasoned that there was water in the tree. Jane made 3 observations. She saw the chimp pick up dry leaves, put them in the hole, and then pull them out wet. Okay, students. So after reading this paragraph, we need to think, what did we read that was the most important words? Okay, we want to think about the science words that we've been learning, not so much the examples about the story. So we don't want to underline anything about Jane or a chimpanzee, but we want to talk about what this paragraph was trying to tell us. So we know that Jane was making observations, and observations is one of our science topics. So I'm going to say that observations is a key word, and I'm going to highlight it in yellow. You can highlight it whatever color you like. Okay, so she made 3 observations. Okay, we can say that the 3 observations she made were from her sight. Okay, she saw, and we know that in observations we use our 5 senses, and sight is one of them. She saw the chimp pick up dry leaves, put them in the hole, and pull them out wet. So for our science understanding with observations, I'm just going to highlight observations and saw, because those 2 things are connected. I'm not going to highlight anything about the chimpanzee and the leaves because that won't really help us when we have to write a definition of observations on our homework or our test. Okay? So the most important main idea to highlight in this sentence, there's not a lot of science. It's just telling the story. Okay? But if I were to highlight a sentence, I would probably say that Jane, who is a scientist, made some observations. I'm just going to underline that right there. Okay? Let's go to paragraph 2. Here we go. I'm going to read out loud. You read along with me in your head. But Jane was not observing when she reasoned or thought that there was water inside the tree. She was inferring. When you explain or interpret the things you observe, you are inferring or making an inference. Inferring is not guessing. Inferences are based on reasoning from what you already know. They could also be based on assumptions you make about your observations. See what inferences you can make about the chimps in this picture. Okay, before we do that, let's pause. Let's talk about what we just read. It says Jane was not observing when she reasoned that there was water in the tree. That's because Jane was not seeing the water in the tree. She couldn't see in the hole. She only observed the water on the stick and the leaves when the chimp pulled them out. So she made an inference that there was water in the tree. Okay? That is inferring. When you explain or interpret the things you observe, you are inferring, okay, or making an inference. This whole sentence explains inferring. So for me, that makes sense to underline that whole sentence because it explains our vocabulary word of inferring, okay? So when we highlight things, we probably want to highlight the word inferring or inference, and then maybe some other words that talk about what it means, okay? So inferring, it says it's when you explain or interpret the things you observe. So we're going to want to highlight explain because inferring is explaining or interpreting the things you observe. So it's explaining your observations. Okay? Inferring is not guessing. We could highlight not guessing because here it's also saying what inferring is not. So not guessing is probably something important we want to highlight. Inferences are based on reasoning from what you already know. So this tells me inferences are, that's going to tell me what more things inferences are, and that's important to us. So inferences are reasoning, I'll highlight that, from what you already know about life. I'm going to highlight that too. They could also be based on assumptions. We could highlight assumptions because here it's still talking about what inferences are, okay? All right, so now I see I have a lot of things highlighted and one sentence underlined. Your paper needs to look like mine, okay? So if you need to, pause the video and highlight the same words I highlighted and underline the same sentence I underlined. Okay, pause the video and do that now. All right, students. Last thing, inferring and observing practice. Check this picture out right here. 2 chimpanzees, okay? That is one observation. You could say, I see 2 chimpanzees. You could also extend that to tell us what they are doing. Write 2 observations about the chimps on the right. So what are you observing about them? Okay, what do you see in the picture? Okay, here he's got a hand, so he's holding something. You could see maybe what they're looking at. Okay, don't make any inferences yet about what you think you know they're doing. Only write down what you see. Okay, Then after you write those two, you're going to maybe put a 1 and a 2. Okay. The second one says use your observations that you wrote to write 2 inferences. Now inferences are what you think the chimpanzees are doing from what you already know about life. What do you think the chimpanzees are doing right now? Okay. Remember, when you start an inference, we want to say, sorry, my numbers are getting crazy. I infer that. And then you want to keep going and tell us, what do you infer the chimpanzees are doing? Okay? All right, students, when you are finished with this, you are going to go to your Canvas page, click on the textbook inferring question. That is for graded assignment. Okay, good luck.